Do you ever just come back to a piece of media that you used to love when you were little, and then now you're back when you're grown, and then you watch it and you're like, huh, so it wasn't a fever dream, huh? Well, shit. Well, that's how I feel perfectly about the film franchise Open Season. Now, I might be a little embarrassed of saying this, but I used to watch this movie a lot when I was growing up. Hell, I used to consider it one of my favorite films of all time. And that was 5 years ago, and let's just say that my opinions have definitely changed. But a couple of weeks back, before it got taken off Netflix, I decided to watch it. And I'm like, you know what? I might like this movie again. Hell, I might appreciate it more that I'm grown up. And I watched it, and all I have to say is, how the fuck is this movie real? And so, here I am, talking about it, and, just giving my overall opinions on it. So, is it as good as I remembered, or is it aged terribly? Well, there's only one way to find out. Open Season is a 2006 American computer animated comedy film directed by Roger Allens and Jim Colton. And fun fact, this was the first animated film directed and produced by Sony Pictures Animation. Yeah, that Sony Pictures Animations. You know, the ones that are making fucking Spider-Verse and Mitchell's vs. the Machines. Yeah, these guys were the ones that made Open Season. How the fuck is this real? Now, the idea of Open Season came from the cartoonist Steve Moore, who is known for his comic strips in The Bleacher. Moore and the producer John Carl submitted a story to Sony in June 2002, and the film immediately went in development. On January 29, 2004, Sony Pictures Animations announced the beginning of the production of Open Season, its first CGI animated film. The Sony animation team developed a digital tool called Sharps that allowed the animators to reshape the character's model into stronger poses and silhouettes, and subtle distortions such as squash and stretch and smears, typical to traditional and hand-drawn animation, which is definitely the thing that they wanted to do for this movie to make it seem as an inspiration to the original Looney Tunes cartoons. And the movie eventually came out on September 29th, 2006, with a lot of audiences really liking the movie and being a success in the box office, earning $200.8 million on an $85 million budget, which, if you don't understand what that means, just know that this movie did extremely well. And although it did pretty well with audiences, yeah, this movie didn't do that well with critics, with a lot of them giving it a 5 out of 10 and saying that it's just average, which, no, this movie isn't average. This movie's fucking bananas, but I'll get to that when I get to that. But with all the history out of the way, let's talk about the movie itself. So what's this movie about? Well, in the small town of Timberline, a grizzly bear by the name of Boog enjoys his life being the star attraction of a town's nature show, while living in the garage of a park ranger and his caretaker called Beth, who's been raising Boog ever since he was a cub. Till one day Boog meets a one-antler yet wild deer by the name of Elliot, who was recently run over and put in the trunk of the main antagonist's car by the name of Shaw. Boog does eventually let Elliot out of the trunk and lets him go free, but Elliot follows Boog back home, and that same night both of them cause a bit of mayhem thanks to Elliot, and then Boog gets into big trouble after getting caught by the sheriff of the town and Beth's friend Gordy, which after getting him back home, Gordy gives Beth an ultimatum: let him go or make the leaving of him being more painful a year later. And the next morning you see Elliot getting chased by Shaw, and then you see that he goes to find Boog while he's performing, and Boog really doesn't want to do anything with him, so he tries to get rid of him, and then the audience sees and mistakes him for attacking Elliot, and then they go into panic, until eventually a mistake happens, and then Beth has to neutralize with a tranquilizer gun both animals, and then they have to go to the wild. What follows is an adventure between Boog and Elliot trying to go back home to Timberlake, and also meeting a lot of new friends along the way. Now, I could definitely understand if a lot of people would compare this movie to another type of movie such as Madagascar, but what differentiates both of these movies is the execution, and honestly, I think the execution for Open Season is done fairly well. All I'm gonna say is that this movie's pretty much crazy bananas, but when it knows when it's to slow down, have a serious moment, it knows when to do so, and I think that the writing done for all the characters is done fairly well. I think that this is done especially well with both of the characters, Boog and Elliot, where you see them first, Boog is kinda skeptical about Elliot, just seeing him as just some guy, and then when they meet up again and they have fun, you sort of see Boog hating Elliot a lot more, but when they're left alone in the forest, you see their relationship and bond grow over time, which I think is done fairly well. Speaking of which, I also really like a lot of the other characters as well. The Scottish Squirrel, Giselle, fucking, what's his name, Ian? that guy, the fucking giant buck guy, he's fucking hilarious. And the villain Shaw is definitely a really good villain. Even though he's just another hunter, they made him the most psychotic and most threatening a hunter can be to an animal. And I think that's done fairly well, especially with his theme and how fucking threatening he can be. I think that the threat level did especially well when Boog went to his house, and that was definitely done especially well, both in the editing, the visuals, and just the writing itself. It's just all around good stuff. But if you expect this movie to be kind of a drama, yeah, don't expect that. This movie does not take itself seriously, and I fucking love that. And this is something that I've seen criticized a lot with this movie. That being that it's a really silly movie, and that's about it. But it's a silly movie that takes itself way too seriously, and I absolutely love it for that reason. It's so much fun. That's the best way I can describe this movie. It's a movie that you can watch with your friends and just have a good time. Although I'm not gonna act like this movie's a masterpiece in humor, because it's not. There's definitely some jokes that definitely fall flat in his face really hard, which definitely does emphasize the good jokes it has. But I really do like this movie's writing. But one thing I really want to talk about is the animation, because for a movie from 2006, the animation in this movie holds up extremely well. Like I mentioned before, this movie came out in 2006, an era where CGI animation was fairly a new thing, and a lot of studios wanted to try new things out. And like I said, for a first movie that came out in 2006, and being their first CGI movie, it still looks fairly well to this day. The character animations, the quash and stretch, the fur textures, and especially the backgrounds all look really beautiful at the end of the day. Although there are definitely some aspects that look kinda dated now, I still wouldn't say that this animation's bad. I still think that it holds up pretty well to this day. Now, am I saying that this movie's perfect? No, absolutely not. There's a lot of things that really annoy me about this movie. More specifically, some of the characters and the story. Now, while I did praise the story for having really good writing, there's a lot of potential here that would have been done really well with a movie like this that was greatly missed. And as for the characters, a lot of the side characters just sort of annoyed me for the most part. And hell, I'm not even going to state that Elliot himself wasn't annoying, because he was probably one of my least favorite characters in the entire movie. And another thing that kind of annoyed me, well, not really, that I think it's sort of a nitpick, but not really, I just kind of like it. I don't know how to describe it, but is that this movie's fucking bananas. There's so much shit happening in here, like sexual tendencies, drug references, and literal ducks with PTSD. This movie's so out of place and really much of a disaster that it's so good. It's so hard to describe. It's like a disaster, but a disaster that you just enjoy watching. I really don't know how to explain it. Overall, I really did enjoy my time watching Open Season. Like I said, the movie isn't perfect. There's a lot of things dragging it down, and the things that drag it down really drag it down. But for the most part, I'm not gonna lie when I say that I had a lot of fun revisiting this movie. It's chaotic and it's fun, and that's what I really wanted to see from this movie. Now, if you're expecting me to talk about the sequels, yeah, no thanks. The sequels are kind of mid. There's not really that much to talk about them, other than the fact that they added new characters, and Elliot actually got laid and actually had children, which good for him, but like, holy shit. But like, for the most part, these movies, like the sequels, they're not really that great and not really that worth the time to talk about. But if you want to hear my opinion, they're fine. The second one's okay. The third and fourth one are kind of shit. That's about it. If you want to see an Open Season movie, go watch the first one. It's really good. I would have told you to watch it on Netflix, but now it's gone to Netflix, which I'm really mad about. But overall, I give Open Season a 7.5 out of 10. It's a really fun movie.
There's none of those things out here.
Well, what do you do?
You know, I can't remember.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?